All good. So my name is Teresa Devine. I work at HHS in the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, which is a mouthful. But just to give you guys some context, that actually sits within the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health. And we manage a number of initiatives out of that office, including Healthy People 2020, which we're going to use as sort of a case study of migration to Drupal. But we also manage health.gov. And healthfinder.gov, which houses dietary guidelines for Americans, physical activity guidelines for Americans, and some health literacy work. So to get us started, I think we have a pretty small crowd, so we can probably take questions as they come up. And then we'll obviously have time for questions at the end as well. And then I have two of my colleagues here with me this morning, Sarah Pomerantz and Matt Allen, who both work at Communicate Health, and they are our web contractor on healthypeople.gov. So I just wanted to see if I can move the slides. There we go. Just a brief agenda for this morning's meeting. Again, we're going to keep it relatively informal, so just as questions come up, feel free to interrupt. But just give you a basic overview of Healthy People and sort of our need for a better content management system for healthypeople.gov. Talk a little bit about our experience migrating from a .NET site, which was our custom CMS, to Drupal. And then Sarah will talk a little bit more about user experience improvements and some user testing that we did as part of that migration. And then Matt will be the more technical focus of the presentation and really talk about some of those key features and Drupal taxonomies that we're using on this site. So any questions before we get started? Learning about Healthy People. Okay, so what is Healthy People? I imagine most of you do not know what Healthy People is. So just basically, it is really sort of the nation's public health initiative looking at where are we now and where do we want to be at the end of the decade. So really it provides or establishes national health objectives. And by national health objectives, I mean more than 1,200 health objectives with targets over a 10-year period. So we have baselines for the start of the decade and targets for where we want to be at that end of the decade. And then that second part of Healthy People is really providing data and tools to track progress that we're seeing across the nation, and to also provide tools and resources to motivate action at the national and local levels. And really it's known as a roadmap for disease prevention and health promotion efforts. It's really looking at where are we now and where do we want to be. And again, really focusing on science-based and data-driven outcomes. So this is just showing the breadth of Healthy People. We have 42 topic areas, and again, as I mentioned, more than 1,200 objectives. We have objectives in everything from global health, emergency preparedness, social determinants of health, access to health services, and sort of the breadth of this has really necessitated this migration to Drupal to give us a little bit more internal management over some of this content. So just to get us started, just some online tools and resources that we have on the website. Aside from sort of all of these topic area information and all of these objectives and what we call objective blocks, where it has sort of what is the objective, all of the data associated with that objective, and any other resources that would be helpful within those objectives. But the big sort of three tools that we'll look at today and how sort of Drupal has helped us maintain these and improve these are Data 2020, which is really our tool for searching and displaying all of the data for each of those 1,200 objectives. Our evidence-based resources, which is a searchable database of evidence-based resources and interventions related to Healthy People 2020 topic areas and objectives. And then the Social Determinants of Health Portal, which is really a searchable database of SDOH resources by domain or by category that we have established. So again, just what was our process? Back in the fall of 2013, we started talking about migrating from this custom content management system where we really, as an office, had to rely primarily on developers and contractors to make even basic site changes. So bolding a word, we had to ask them, hey, can you bold this for us? Hey, can you remove this content for us? Hey, can you add this content for us? Hey, can you change this picture for us? And it got really redundant and really inefficient and really costly. So when we started working with Communicate Health, we started talking about how can we make this a little bit more efficient and give us a little bit more ownership for some of that content management. Yes?
You said to jump in with questions?
Yes, please.
Real kind of basic background question. Who's the audience of the website? Is it for kind of health leaders at all levels?
Yeah, so
The public?
Yeah, so it's more public health professional focused. We have a lot of academics, a lot of students, and then a lot of clinicians, so doctors, nurses. It's used a lot in public health and school medicine classes, and then mostly sort of state and local health departments. So not only was this an opportunity for us to give us more control internally of content on our site, but it was also an opportunity for us to conduct sort of a whole host of usability and user testing research. So everything from testing sort of existing tools on the site and testing existing information architecture. So we had usability tests, focus groups, in-depth interviews, tree testing, and Sarah will talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. And really our perspective was, this isn't our site. We really wanted to empower our users, so the refresh was really about making sure that healthypeople.gov users were getting what they really needed out of it. So this was an opportunity for us to take another step back and do some usability testing with a lot of our tools on the site. So we had over 2,000 pages migrated to Drupal 7 over the course of that year. We launched back in, I guess it was October of last year. And this is just sort of to give you an idea of what it looked like pre and post the homepage. We really wanted to create sort of a larger, more prominent banner so that we could highlight national health observances and key announcements that we wanted to highlight to our users. And we really wanted to create a dedicated space for tools and resources on our site, where we had seen in terms of our user testing that it was almost sort of an approach for users to say, oh, I had no idea that this tool existed. So we really wanted to put that front and center on the homepage based on some of those findings that we had seen from the user testing. We also had a chance to make some pretty big changes to existing tools in terms of search functionality. So really looking at how we can enhance how folks are searching for data and how folks are searching for evidence-based resources. And that's something that Matt will talk about a little bit more in depth as well. So any questions before we get into some more of the usability pieces of the migration? Yeah.
Yes. So was migration done with help from the content owners? You know, were they involved, or was it done sort of more in an automated fashion?
I think it was a little bit of both, but Matt can probably speak to that a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, there was a big role from the content owners. First we did kind of a large audit of all the existing content on the site, how it was currently organized. We did a relatively small information architecture change when we switched over to the new website as part of this migration, but it was mostly, really content was migrated in using some of the automated processes that can be done, but we organized it and set it up and made it all work with different filters and pieces of content, working very closely with the content owners.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we get into some of the user testing work? Great.
Thanks, Teresa. Good morning, everyone. As Teresa said, I'm Sarah Pomeranz, and I'm with Communicate Health. We are a health education and communication firm, and we support, as she mentioned, the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion and a number of their websites, including healthypeople.gov. And I was leading the team that support the content maintenance and the development of this website. So as Teresa mentioned, the decision to migrate to Drupal was an exciting opportunity for us to conduct some of this user-centered research and really make sure that all of this effort involved in migrating the site would really pay off for the site's end users. And we wanted to make sure not only that the site would improve the user experience compared to the sort of baseline that we had on the old .NET site, but also we were making sure that the new features that we were building would be helpful and as easy to use as possible for folks coming to the site. So to accomplish this, we used some of the multiple strategies that Teresa just mentioned, which I'll kind of dive into here. So here's a list of all of the different methods that we used to learn more about users' needs and to really involve users in the development of the Drupal site. So this user-centered design process began with these focus groups and interviews to learn more about things like how familiar users were with the Healthy People initiative, as well as things like their preferred information channels. And we developed a suite of personas based on this formative research. So one of those personas is shown here, and that's a fictional representation of a typical site user. which we use to help us guide some of our content strategy and to help us with the requirements gathering process. In addition to conducting kind of formal usability tests before and after, sort of pre and post the Drupal migration, we also conducting tree testing to evaluate the information architecture. So as Matt mentioned, as part of the content audit and migration, we adjusted some of the IA on the site, and that was informed by doing tree testing with users, which if you haven't done it before, it just involves letting users sort of navigate kind of a tree of the content on your site and show the researcher where they would go to locate particular pieces of information. And this tells us not only if the categories are making sense and the hierarchy works for folks, but also if the labels that are being used are intuitive for users. We also conducted a handful of informal prototype tests to really just focus in on the new features, the features that were new in the Drupal build, not the things that were being migrated from the .NET site. And this helped us make sure that the technical requirements we'd collected for these new tools were really fitting with how folks were interacting with these prototypes. One lesson that I'll share is that because all of this user testing was going on during the migration process, it meant that our user research folks were working really closely with the content owners as well as with the development team, and which I think actually helped us to implement a lot of the findings that we were hearing from users as we were sort of iteratively refining and going through the site development process. So next I'm going to sort of dive into one of the specific tools to show some of the user experience challenges that we were seeing on the old .NET site. And then Matt's also going to talk more about how we reimagined it using Drupal. So the tool that we're going to focus on for the next few minutes is this Data 2020 tool, which Teresa spoke about. And this tool allows users to sort of look up and search for public health data for these specific objectives. So a typical use case might be that someone's coming to the site because they want to know, how are the rates of diabetes screening looking, among men versus women over the decade. So to look up that type of data. We really wanted to see how folks were interacting with this tool on .NET so that we could gather the requirements on how to recreate this in Drupal using things like taxonomies and the faceted search module. So next I'm going to play you an example from just a clip of a user testing video. And this was a test in which a participant was asked to try using this tool to look up some data. And before I play the clip, I just want to note that in the morning's keynote, I heard Angie really call for, and remind us about the importance of advocating for the end user. And I hope this clip kind of shows how with some quick testing we can really identify where things might be falling down and where we can make improvements. Okay, so I'm just going to play part of the clip from this usability test.
And what are you seeing right now on your screen?
So I see the select topic area of interest and then the box with all of the topic areas, and to the right of that I see select data source.
Okay, so go ahead and go through that process. I'm caught up with you.
Okay, great. So I'm kind of torn as to what data source I would actually look at, because there were a few that I think could be relevant. So I would actually think about the school health policies and practices, perhaps. And I think, can you only select one data source? Yes. And I would click continue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, talk me through what you're seeing.
Sure. So I see that there's 7 objectives in physical activity with this data source, and so I would actually open up where it says expand objectives. I would open up that. I'm just reading through, and this is more about policy, so it seems not to be what it is I'm looking for. So I would go to the search the data, and I guess it may make more sense to actually look at any data source pertaining to physical activity. Click continue. Oh, no results.
Okay. So as you saw in that example, the participant actually wasn't able to locate the data that she was looking for in this task. And this was somewhat typical of what we were seeing, is that people would sometimes select filters and expect to get results that were different than what they found. So there was a lot of sort of trial and error going back and forth and adjusting filters. And sometimes people would, choose filters where they'd end up with no results. And we were seeing this not only on this Data 2020 tool, but also on the other evidence-based resources tool on the old site, which used a similar sort of multi-page search process where you'd start with a page that asks you to select some filters, and then sometimes have an intermediary page, and then finally be able to view your results. So those were the types of issues that we were seeing on the previous site. And so how this informed our requirements for kind of recreating this tool in Drupal is that, first of all, we knew it was important to place the filters on the same page as the results, and this would help users get kind of real-time feedback. So for example, if you've ever used a site like kayak.com to search for flights, you're familiar with an interface that allows you to see your results change as you change your filters without having to navigate between pages. So we wanted to look at that type of experience, and also that kind of immediate constant feedback to users. We also wanted to add some advanced filtering that would make it easier for users to kind of scan their filtering options and understand kind of the depth and how complex the kind of organization of objectives were, so that they really understood how sophisticated this tool could be if they chose to use it that way. So next I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to talk about sort of where we ended up after this kind of iterative process. Any questions before we move on? Yeah.
You had mentioned at the beginning this was a custom CMS built in Microsoft technology, basically by a combination of a lot of things. Did you look at perhaps buying off the shelf Microsoft technology for CMS?
We did. Yeah, we did. Sure. Yeah, we evaluated some of the options. Some of the big ones out there like SharePoint, Umbraco. Some big ones we looked at. There are a few options we evaluated. None of them met our really needs across the board, and weren't really as extendable or as kind of, to meet everything we wanted to do and expand into some specific features we want to do in the long run. Healthy People is a really interesting site, and I was just going to bring this up, is that it's a good use case for kind of any government website, any website in general. They have a ton of just content, natural, just text, things that are interesting to users that kind of update regularly, news and events that go in there. They update regularly. They also have this massive data source. There's a lot of numbers and data related to diabetes, such in terms of health, other information like that, really we had to figure out a way to get all this data into a presentable way on the website and allow users to filter it and see what they want to get from that content. So we did a lot of evaluation to determine Drupal was the best bet. We're really happy with that choice now where we are on the road. We'll talk as we get closer to the end of these slides that we're still obviously doing iterative development, right? We're adding new features, we're improving things, and we can do it very quickly and easily thanks to some of the things that are built into Drupal without slowing down regular content development and monthly updates and whatever else happens on the site. So really happy with that.
And does the site surface content from other external sources, or is it all within the CMS?
Currently, it's all within the CMS. We have, like I said, we do have a large data set that we import, I think 4 times a year. It's up or down depending on how much the data changes. But in addition to that, we are currently using, we'll talk about it later, HHS's Content Syndication Storefront as an avenue for syndicating the Healthy People website content. And we are very interested in finding ways to integrate some external content from other HHS storefront customers as well as CDC storefront, maybe other API users out there to pull back in Healthy People so we're not writing all of our own content all the time. Yeah. Great. All right, so Sarah had the unfortunate job, like she does as usability tester, of showing the problems with the old site, right? She'd look at the bad stuff and say, what's wrong with this? And people are upset with her, and I can't use this thing, and no results. So sorry, Sarah, but I get to show the cool new stuff. And so basically what we're looking at here is this is the kind of reimagined new faceted search results page for Data 2020. One big problem we saw in the video was our user went in, she just wanted to see information about, what was the topic? Do you remember? It was about school education programs. School education programs, right? So she found the right place. She went to physical activity. She went to that topic area, and she was ready to go in and start seeing information. and she just hit a wall. She said, what are these data sources? Why do I need to pick those? I don't know what these data sources are. So she picks one at random and goes to the next page, and she gets a list of objectives that are just titles and have specific names, and they seem more like research oriented to her. So she doesn't know what to do with this, and so she reads a little bit and goes back and tries to start over. Now she's looking at all data sources, and she finally picks physical activity, which is a good step, and then tries again, and something else is wrong with the search. So the problem is she's not seeing what she wants to see right away. She's not seeing any objectives, she's not seeing information, she's just getting a page with a form, which is not what you want to see right away, and then she does not interact with it. She can't get down to actually what she wants to get out of that search. So what we did is we pulled the search results up to the top. So when you land on the page, immediately all of the 2020 data 2020 topic area objectives are visible on this page. It's over 1,300 objectives, so there's a lot of information there. If you want to go through it page by page, you're more than welcome to. Probably not how we recommend that you interact with the content. But what we had instead is this faceted search that you see on the left side here. And so you can expand each one of these and filter by a lot of different groupings that we use to apply to each one of the objectives. And the way these are powered is by Drupal's taxonomies and the faceted search module. So I'm just going to play a short video, kind of show how this page works, how users can interact with it, how it actually does filter the data. I will expand here. So first thing, oh wait, let me take a step back. First thing is the page first loaded, data was all there. Now, at the top, we have two filters that are also available on the left side of the page, you might notice. They are kind of the most common ways to filter this data. Users are probably going to come in, they're going to look for content on a particular topic area. If they're looking for physical activity, that's where they're going to go. Or if they know they want a certain data source, they're looking for, on all data sources, we're looking for content from one of our data sources, they'll pick just that one to make sure they only get the information that they want to receive with no other objectives included. So that's why we call it up to the top. They're not the only options. They don't have to be the first step. They just regularly are for most of our testing. It's what users wanted to do first with this content. All right, so then we'll go in here. We've now just filtered by one of these objectives. Now we're seeing a little bit less. Now we're only seeing cancer objectives. Now we're going down, we're going to use another one. We have filtered now just by the sex of male. So we're getting a lot less cancer objectives. Now we have another filter applied, and we're seeing less and less. So as you see, there's still a good amount of data here, but we're pulling it down. So now there's only about 8 objectives visible. It's specific to what this user's looking for. They're looking for content that is about cancer for a male in a certain setting that they chose. I didn't see what it was in the video. So you're getting really targeted information right away with very little wait time. You're getting the result, and you can get right into what you're looking to see. So that was kind of our goal with this faceted search page, was to really just show some data, get them something, let them kind of see what's available, all the facets, and then dig down and get what they really want to see. That's really the end of this video. We don't need to go any further. All right. So then we'll go back to our PowerPoint. The way we're doing this is using an incredibly powerful tool within Drupal. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with. I'm sure others might not be. This is a beginner session, I have to remember. So basically, taxonomies are this great tool within Drupal that allow you to create a list of items that you can apply to any content type or block or anything else along with your data. And so what you do is you create these taxonomies and you apply them to a content type, and you can select them through the normal admin content editing interface, and they give some grouping. So each one of these by default creates just a page. So for our data 2020 objective content types, we have these taxonomies that you can see here on the screen. If we didn't do any more work with that, we would just have age group, children 1 to 9 would just create a page that listed all of these, all the objectives that are associated with that one facet, or with that one taxonomy item. So what we've done instead is we've used the faceted search module. And that search module is fantastic at using your taxonomies to create a search page that updates on the fly, like we just saw with the Day 2020 search page. So we have here, you can see with Day 20, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 or 7 taxonomies applied. God bless you. That we use to group all those objectives into for easy searching. We do the same thing with a couple other content types. This is our EBRs, evidence-based resources, that have, as you can see, a lot more taxonomies applied. This is a really kind of complicated content piece we have here, and with Drupal, we're able to really simplify it. On the admin side, we have a lot of fun with some really complicated content editing and keeping it up to date. But for the end user, it's incredibly simple. Just like we saw on the 2020 search page, it's simple, all your results right away, faceted search. We have I think there's just one drop down to get into certain objectives, but it's really nice, really a lot simpler, and we're able to do this with taxonomies and faceted search. This one's great, SDOH Portal, Social Determinants of Health. I should really use the full name instead of abbreviation in these slides. So with these, we only have 2 taxonomies, which is great, makes it a lot easier on the admin side. But using these 2 taxonomies, we're able to get a really slick interface that I really like with our SDOH Portal, which is, there's some JavaScript here and some front-end stuff going on, but at the end, this is just the same as we saw previously. This is a faceted search page with the results displayed in a different way. When you interact with the page, your results get sorted. We'll see a quick look at it here in a pretty short video. This page loads, and it's playing, right? This page loads, playing the video. There we go. All right, and you can see there's a lot of evidence-based resources listed here, and they have little icons denoting which of the domains. Thank you. I was waiting for it to scroll back up so I could read the word. Domains they fall into. You can interact with this large graphic that lets you kind of select the domain that you want to display to change your filtering. It shows up down below. It's just like a little interface for this page. You can also, if that graphic's daunting, you just don't know what to do with it. Some of our lower literacy users didn't really understand how to use that large graphic, so we threw in below a more common interaction element, which is just a drop down that you see here on this last step. Or it's the wrong video. There's a little just a drop down below to just select the domain that you want to view in the same way. So that's how we use faceted search on Healthy People. It's really really handy for us to show this complex data in a much simpler way and make it easier for our users. And we've gotten great feedback from our current usability testing on how that's working out. Any questions about faceted search or we're doing the taxonomies? Great. You go ahead.
I'm not sure I'm asking it right, but do you share taxonomies across content types, or are they all?
Absolutely, you can. Yeah. So taxonomies are their own element. They exist on their own, just like a menu or anything like that. You can apply them to multiple different content types. In this case, we only have a few that carry over. Age, gender, those carry over across all the content types that we have. The others are a lot more specific. But yeah, you can create age ranges and then just use that across all your content types. Yeah. Okay. All right, so beyond faceted search, some other things we do on Other People to kind of use some of the new cool stuff that's out there and kind of get our content to everyone is we're using the new HHS content syndication storefront. The actual storefront itself is not that new. It's been around for quite some time. It didn't receive a lot of momentum early on because it was a little hard to interact with. Some of the code behind it was a little complicated and cumbersome for developers. HHS has made great strides in making it more usable. And when we made the migration from our old website into the Drupal CMS, we immediately wanted to find a way to syndicate our content, and working with HHS was a great opportunity to do that. So we got in touch with them. They had just developed, that week, had developed a Drupal kind of syndication module. So we were the first user of that module. We encountered many bugs, and we were able to assist them and getting through some of those. But it was a great experience. We had to work with them closely. Now it's used by many sites. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's quite a few. And so it's fantastic. So not only is it a great tool, it's plug and play. It works right away for any Drupal website. But being an early adapter, we were able to get kind of some of our give them some input on kind of how it could work, how it can make sites, improve sites and improve user experience. Because one of the things we do to make it help is we really look at user experience of end users and site administrators, right? We want our content editors to be able to work easily with this website. And so one note that we put in early on when we got this tool was, wow, it doesn't auto-publish, right? So when you go into Drupal, like we saw in the keynote this morning, Drupal 8 is a lot slicker and nicer on the admin side than Drupal 7 was. But Drupal 7 is fine if you customize it really well and use a theme. So when you go into the admin, you you enter your content, you choose your taxonomies, you add your meta tags, whatever else you do, and then you hit publish, and this page is live. And then later on you come back and you edit it, and you might publish again. And every time you publish, it creates a new version of the page, and it goes live to end users. The syndication module was requiring another step. You had to go to somewhere else and then say syndicate this page, syndicate that page. We contributed to their module and added support for them, so that now you can auto select content types that will be auto published when they go live in Drupal. So for us, we selected our evidence-based resources. We selected news and events content types. We have some sharing library stories. I'm going to call stories from the field. And I believe for our basic page, we have a certain flag that makes it work. So whenever any of those pages get edited or published for the first time in the CMS, and you hit publish, immediately a bit of code, some JSON goes over to the HTTP Syndication storefront, gets updated there automatically. The date last published gets modified, and that content is readily available within the storefront for any users anywhere, whether they use Drupal or not, to pull our content directly from People.gov and have it on their website in a syndicated manner. So that meets one of our great needs. For People is really want our content everywhere, right? It's the big digital government push, and we're fully on board with that. We want our content to go to all users, whether they come to People.gov, whether they're subscribed to our email list, whether they're following us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, they're using the HSS Syndication storefront. However they want to build content with them to get it and get it right away and be able to see what we're doing. So the kind of goal here. So great. So let me show a few next steps on what we're doing with this website. So like I mentioned earlier, Drupal allows us to have great just iterative improvements without slowing down anything else we're doing. Every day we're changing content, right? We find something to bold, we find a typo here, we want to push out a new event that's happening, or an update to an image that might be new, or some new data comes in, and we're at the end of the site. We can just do it on the fly. We can just go right into the the editing interface, make a few changes, publish, done, nothing to worry about. But larger changes, we're going to build a new interface for some tool, or we're going to build a new section of the site, or whatever else we're working on. It takes a little bit of time, right? We're going to pull a developer in, we're going to do some development on that, we're probably going to test it on a server, and then we'll push that to production when we're ready. And so thanks to Drupal, we can do that because database and code are obviously separate. So things we're working on. We're this big Data 2020 initiative we've been talking about for a while. It's data, and it comes from an external source. We plug it into the site. It's all hidden through entity references on the site that are not easily admin editable intentionally, because this is really specific content that is given to us and we're not supposed to tinker with it. But there are times when the team that gives us the content, or even ourselves, we find an issue, we find a typo, we find a problem, or a number changes. It happens. They redo calculations and we get a new percentage. So we're expanding our CMS now to open up those entity references, which is not built into Drupal by default. So we're adding some functionality in there to make that work. That's coming very soon. We'll make our data a lot more current and always up to date. I won't have to wait for these quarterly data pushes that happen all the time as needed. We're also looking at here the new Data 2020 search page. We looked at an old version a minute ago. The changes here are relatively minor, but there's some things we saw in usability testing. Users didn't really see the faceted search on the left side. It was pushed down by a big blue box on the top that was mostly that objective search that we thought was the main goal of this page. And we still think it is, and we still find user testing that it is, but we determined that it was not enough to overpower faceted search as much as it was. So we've moved that around a little bit to help with people getting around the page. We've shown the search results in a slightly nicer fashion. There's this little customization preferences step that we have that's now hidden in a drawer or a collapsed accordion. It used to be expanded by default. It took up a lot of the page and pushed the actual content really far down. So we're moving that up, a little cleanup on some of the tables and things like that. Just a little nicer user interface we have going here. That's coming very soon. That's not far away, probably within the next month or so. That'll be live on the site. We mentioned testing a lot. We'd love to test our sites. We're going to keep testing this one. So we have coming up some segmented usability testing of just the site as a whole, the 2020 feature after this new one goes live, and a few other small features that are going to be rolling out over the summer, and in the fall we'll keep testing and move things forward. All right, so that is the people. Any questions for any of us? Yeah.
Do you do any testing on the actual taxonomy terms
so what was that like and how did it progress?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. We did do some testing on those terms across the site, and mostly what we heard from users is that they want more terms, less so that the terms are confusing for folks. So, you know, as Teresa mentioned, the site is really intended for public health professionals. So terms like setting, for example, you know, are you looking for evidence-based resources that are intended to be used in a faith-based setting or an educational setting, worksite wellness programs. The users of the site tended to be familiar with what those taxonomy kind of categories meant, but we heard mostly about adding new categories. So for example, I think one recommendation was to add a taxonomy for pregnant women, in addition to being able to search for resources that would apply to men or women. That pregnant women was a subpopulation that some users really specialize in their work, and they wanted to be able to drill down to that group as opposed to having to scan the results of evidence-based resources for women to see if any of them were specifically focused on women who might be pregnant. Did you want to add anything about that? Okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
I have a question about the taxonomy also.
Sure.
Like synonyms, how would you handle that?
That's a good question. So because the users aren't searching directly for these terms, but they're interacting with that preset list, so we haven't needed to look at synonyms yet in the same way that we would for like an open text search. I don't know if you have anything to add in terms of synonyms and how we work with those in other places on the site, like in the site search.
Yeah, I mean, site search, we use a general synonym dictionary. We're actually powered by Digital.gov search. You might have seen in the lobby before the keynote started. They have a fantastic, what's that?
This is like the taxonomy capital of the world in this building, the National Library of Medicine.
Sure, absolutely. They have a ton, and they're the ones. You know, we really, like Sarah said, we haven't needed to do much with the existing taxonomies. But with search, you know, we use a general taxonomy library that's powered by Digital.gov search, and there's just some simple autocorrection and some spelling suggestions if there's issues like that.
I have a quick question. You mentioned that all the content that is searchable is all housed in Drupal and that you update it 4 times a year, very kind of content. Did you look at, I don't even know if this is possible, but a smaller customer of mine that's going to request this, where they want the owners of the content that to be dynamic, so that it doesn't have to necessarily be in the Drupal data store, to where the people that own it can update it and they can access it. Is that possible?
So, what do you mean it's dynamic? It's not within the...
So basically, I'll give a very 1,000-foot view.
Sure.
Let's say a city, and the Department of Motor Vehicles is like, we're not giving up. This is not going to happen for a lot of reasons. But the main site, people, we got to change your tags. You're going to start there. You want to be able to get to the content. And so, how do we handle the problem of, do we have multiple instances of Drupal running, or how does that work?
Sure. So, you know, one thought there would be if the content you're trying to get if they have some sort of an API or a open content mechanism, whether it's a syndication or API or just a feed you can get your hands on, then you could pull that back into Drupal using some of the feed mechanisms that Drupal has built in, and just pull it in to build a page. You build a certain content type that just loads that JSON and builds a node. That'd be my thought for how you would do that. Otherwise, yeah, you have to have some sort of relationship between the two sites.
So basically, I'm at a 1,000-foot view where all my microsites have different platforms and different CMSs. And let's say, high-end and powers that be are saying, we're going to go with this solution. And we have to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the best answer to any question like that I always have is liberate the data, right? Make the data open, put it out there. If you can put it into a feed, RSS, XML, XML, JSON, or one thing we do, Teresa mentioned earlier, we have multiple websites on PHP. One thing we do on healthfinder.gov, which is another PHP web property, we're not in the HTTPS storefront. We're not using some of these other open data mechanisms. We've created a customized content syndication platform fully built for this website in particular. And so you select the data you want. It exports it to an iframe that you can then apply your own style sheet to it from your website and just plug it in to like plug and play. So that'd be an idea there too. If you have that access, it really in the end it's access back to that original data source. And how do you get it? If you don't have access, you might just sort of like tricky screen scraping and stuff like that, which is never great. But that's the worst case scenario. Okay. Any final questions? Okay. Great. Well, we appreciate everyone's time. Thank you. Did you want to wrap up at all? I'm sorry.
Do we need to stop the